Hey everybody, welcome to another Thingamajigger Thursday here at Tucson Higgers, where I go over a unique or uncommon tool once a week. In today's episode, we're going to go over last week's mystery tools. I'll show you what they are and how they're used. Then I'll give you a sneak peek at next week's mystery tools. And hey, before we get started, if you got any suggestions for future tools, mystery tools, unique tools, please throw something down in the comments. So let's get after it. All right, so yeah, this week was definitely easier. Had a bunch of comments. Everybody got it right, no problem. But for those that don't know, this is what's called a knurling tool. You would use this with a lathe, and then you would run the material between these two rollers. So it would roll in there like that, and it would give you that kind of finish. All right, the knurling. And you can have different patterns. So like this one would be a crisscross pattern. Then you could have one that's a finer crisscross pattern, and even finer yet. And they also make ones that just have straight knurling, so you can put just straight grooves onto something, which I've had to do before. When I was rebuilding my vise a couple years ago, the tail cap, I'll throw some photos up here, but the tail cap, the whole thing had been tightened down so hard that it actually broke the two pins that hold the tail nut or tail cap onto the vise. So I needed to make some new ones, and they take 1/4 inch stock, but 1/4 inch was just a little bit too loose to stay in there, so I needed to put some knurling or ribs on it, or impressions. And that basically kind of expands the metal out just a little bit so it'll stay in the groove. So yeah, that's a knurling tool. Honestly, I don't do a lot of machining, but it is handy if you're trying to make like a little hand screw nut or bolt or something like that. You can put some grip on it. I mean, crap, half the stuff we have out here today has knurling on it, so really cool tool right there. All right, moving on to the next one. These ones are called small hole gauges, okay? Small hole gauges, and they're for measuring the inside diameter of small holes, just like it sounds like. So there are many ways to measure the inside of something, and for me, and probably most people, most common way is just to take your dial indicator, dial gauge, dial caliper, and just put it inside the hole like that. However, once you start getting small like this, or even smaller, it gets harder and harder, especially if you need a very accurate measurement. Another way I've seen it done, or done it myself, is just take drill bits and, you know, test it until you get a drill bit that fits in that hole. That's a way you could get that measurement, but again, it's not going to be super accurate. And something else to keep in mind, anytime you're using a tool like this, it's not going to be super precise, okay? It's gonna get you really close, but the problem is you're transferring the measurements. You're going from this to your actual measuring device. So the best way to measure something is the measuring device, whether it's a micrometer, ruler, caliper, doesn't matter, is to take the measurement with the measuring tool. This is a transfer measurement tool. So you would take the measurement of the hole, which I'll show you how in a second, and then you use another device to measure this. So you're losing some accuracy anytime you transfer the measurement. But let's test it out. So the way these work, kind of like I showed last week, these ones are called whole ball or full ball small hole gauges. So this hardened steel ball up here, it's split in the middle, but it's still a full sphere theoretically. This wedge up here, as you tighten it down, spreads that little ball until it snugs up on the inside of the hole. And we'll go over how that works here in a second. So let's get one that's close to this. I just grabbed something that had a drilled hole in it. Okay, so this one will fit. So you would measure it by rocking it around in that hole, in and out, up and down, side to side, until it just starts to grab. Then you would take a caliper of some sort. Obviously the easiest way would be use a dial caliper instead of a micrometer, but we can get a rough estimate. Let's check it out. Until it just starts to grab, kind of like it did on the inside of the hole. So 252, that's basically a 1/4 inch. Let's see what our micrometer says. Yeah. So on this micrometer, we've got 1,000 or 0.1, 0.2, and then each of these smaller lines is 0.25 or 0.025. So we've got two lines there. That's 0.5 or 0.25, and then whatever this reads. So 25 plus 4-ish, I think is what it's reading, 3. So 0.253, and I got 2525 on this. So yeah, that's how that would work. Okay, so that's how those work. Now, other ways to measure inside diameter are with what are called telescoping gauges. And these little guys are for bigger inside holes. I've used these a couple times when I'm trying to measure the insides of bores for either engines or cylinder bores, hydraulic cylinders. When I rebuilt my 50-ton floor jack or bottle jack a few years ago, I had to use this bigger one here to get the full 3.75 inch, just because I bored it out, or I honed it and I didn't want to take too much off of it. So this one, you would slide it into the hole, back and forth, you know, rocking it back and forth until you get to the maximum width, crank it down, and then you would measure the outsides there, because that locks it in place, and it would work basically the same thing, or the same way. And that's, again, keeping in mind that you're transferring a measurement. So it's not going to be quite as accurate as taking an inside micrometer. So this one here, this Lufkin, this is an actual gauge for the inside. So instead of using something like this, you could use one of these. So this guy here, you take your handle, lock it on, and that's just an extension. Obviously, you can change out the length of your extension, but then this guy here is your micrometer. So you would hook that up, and now we basically have one of these with an actual micrometer on it, okay? There it goes. Okay, so now we can adjust this in and out and get our actual reading on it. So you would start at 0, and everything else has a standard measurement that you can base that off of, and then you can expand this to take up the gap. Then you have a legitimate, accurate reading. Then I also have this old dog here. I've never used this. I just got it at an auction, threw it in the toolbox just because it's cool. This is an old Brown and Sharp telescoping gauge, and you can see it's seen better days. I need to really clean this thing up, because this could be really cool, but it's, yeah, old and rusted, and honestly, I don't know how old it is, but it is really cool. Oh, and I got a couple Starrett telescoping gauges as well. So I did look these up real quick. This vintage Craftsman set here, which personally, just by the feel of them, the sturdiness, the construction, I think they're just as good as any other set, including the Starrett's. At least back in the day. Obviously, Craftsman doesn't make quality stuff like this anymore, but these can be had on Fleabay for around 20 bucks. I did see one set that was this set for going at least listed for 130, 129, whatever it was, but obviously you can get them for a lot cheaper than that, and they're still really good quality. I looked up a couple of the Starrett ones. Used Starrett's like this go for around 50 bucks a set, but here's a listing for a new one from Granger, and yeah, they are really, really proud of them. But like I said, this set here, just the quality of it, the feel of it, it's really, really nice, and it's just old school Craftsman. You know, they made some really, really nice stuff back in the day. All right, so that's last week's tools. Before we move on to this one, I just want to talk about a Starrett for just another quick second here. This is a really cool little pointer, awl, scribe, whatever you want to call it, except it's not. I thought it was, and I looked it up in the handy dandy book that we got here, which, oh, by the way, I did find these telescoping gauges. They were in here. And then a couple pages back, we got, or one page this way, we got the same set of small hole gauges right there. I wish they showed the list price or MSRP for whenever this book was. Like I said, I think it was the 70s. I'll double check. I'll throw it up here at the bottom of the screen for the date of this book. Anyway, I also found this tool in here. Oh, look at that. Don't forget to do that for me. So that's that tool. And I'm assuming it's this larger one here, but it's actually a screwdriver. And you can get different tips for it, and the scribe tip is one of those tips. And they made it so that you can easily swap it out and either have a double-ended or a single-sided, but actually I take that back. I think it's supposed to be single-sided, but you could swap it around. That way the pointy edges aren't sticking out, like whether it's a flathead Phillips or the awl or the scribe, you tuck it away like that, and now it's not poking anything. Then when you need to use it, you just flip her around. So Super, super nice. You know, Starrett just really is nice stuff. All right, moving on to next week's mystery tools. Got two of them for you. I wasn't sure I was going to put this one on because I had no clue what it was. I spent a few minutes and I was able to find it, so I'm sure y'all will too, and some of you might actually know what it is right off the top of your head, or used one. I have not used one, but now I know what it is finally. The only writing I could find on it is extremely difficult to see, but it's right in here. See if you can make that out. Solid steel for the most part. We got one side that unscrews. We've got a couple different collets here. There's this little tapered collet, and then this, I think, is called a split collet. And that's the whole thing. And as you tighten one end down, that split collar in the middle, or collet, expands. And that's it. That'll be one. First one. This will be our second one. There you go. So those will be our mystery tools for next week. Everybody knows the drill by now. For those that are new, if you got any guesses on what these are for, if you've actually used it, go ahead and throw it down in the comments. I get back to pretty much everybody. I'm not going to say you're right or not right in the comments. At least I generally don't, but there's next week. All right, moving on to one of my favorite tools. I don't believe I've shown this specifically before, but super handy. I've used it on occasion. It's not something that gets used very often, but it's just a small endoscope. You can get these on Fleabay or Amazon for, less than 50 bucks. This one just hooks up. For those that don't know, an endoscope is just a camera. And sometimes they use them, like doctors use them, mechanics use them. They're used in all sorts of applications. Plumbers especially use them. HVAC guys use them. You can snake one of these up. Ventilation, or like doctors use them to snake them up other places. But this one is super easy to use. You just turn it on. You hook up the Wi-Fi to your phone. This broadcasts a Wi-Fi signal. You know what? I'll just show you. Now, I have learned that if you're using a VPN, you've got to turn that off. It does not like that. It does not work with that. But for me, it shows up with this guy right here, this endage. You select that as your network. It connects, it checks, it says you don't have internet. Then there is this HD Wi-Fi app that they tell you to download in the instructions, HD Wi-Fi app. And then that's it. Your phone is now the screen for the camera. So we've got a camera, looking at a camera, looking at a camera. There's the rest of the barn. And that's it, completely wireless. And I've used this especially when I go checking out other engines. So say I'm going to buy a lawnmower. I've literally done this exact thing. I bought an engine to put on my log splitter. It was a lawnmower engine is what I wanted. And I get there, I pop the spark plug and stuff this thing down in there. Just a few weeks ago when I finished up that stainless steel exhaust on Reba, the Centurion, I used this to snake down inside of the stainless steel, snake down inside of the tubing or the exhaust piping so I could see what the welds looked like on the inside. Adjustable light right here, you can adjust the intensity of the light. This is the, I think, 1 meter. You can get different lengths, and it's just really, really handy. All right, well, that's going to be a wrap for today. I appreciate you all stopping by. Again, if you got any suggestions for future tools, please throw something down in the comments. If you got any critiques, I'd love to hear those too. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons on your way out. Have a safe and great weekend. We'll see you next Thursday.